Okay, so this is gonna be a hard one. We're gonna react to Tame Impala's Inner Speaker live from the Wave House recording. We're gonna try and analyze specific pieces of gear, techniques that they're using to get this really amazing live sound. And then we're gonna recreate that as accurately as possible in a more humble home studio. The track we're gonna be recreating is Lucidity. So what I love about this recording, not only is it the exact same house where the first record was made, but a lot of the same recording techniques and a lot of the gear is all the same, which is why this live session recorded way after the original record sounds so similar to the original record. So if we understand the techniques that we're seeing here, we kind of understand how to apply the techniques from the original album. Okay, so let's listen to Alter Ego and Lucidity and react to what we hear. Okay, so right from the get-go, before even analyzing any of the amps and the recording gear, we see this little interface on the table next to Kevin. That, I believe, is a Boss BR864. These are 8-track recording units, and they're, you know, super 2000s core, the way that they look and the way that they sound. If I understand correctly, these were used to record not only the original record, but also a lot of the guitar tones. You can see in the reflection here, Kevin does have a Vox AC30, and it is being mic'd up, but we also potentially have an input signal going into this Boss interface. So we might have a mixture of a DI signal, this Boss, mixing in with the AC30 tone. Okay, since we're zooming into the drums here, why don't we just instantly talk about them? And actually, if we go into the comments section, because Tame Impala fans are Tame Impala fans, we actually already have the list of mics listed here. On this record, they used a really unique way of recording drums. So you'll see here we have one microphone on the snare, but we also have a mic on the snare side. This is really common for the Tame Impala drum sound. In this case, the top is an AKG D19 and the snare side is a D190E. You can see here they have an SM57 on the floor tom, which is kind of an irregular choice. If we look from the side here, we have a Sennheiser MD421 on the kick. That's one thing that is all over a ton of Tame Impala tracks. We actually have the new mini MD421 here. So we're gonna be using this all over the record wherever we need a 421. There's that side snare that I was talking about before. And another big signature component of this record sound is a single mono overhead. Typically when you're miking a drum kit, you're gonna put 2 different overheads and kind of pan them left and right to get a really wide drum sound. This is very Beatles-esque in the sense that the drums sit kind of center in the mix with a single mono overhead. And looks like for the mono overhead, we actually have another AKG D19. Another thing when you're talking about these drum sounds, and I outline this a lot on my original video essay on this record, the drum sounds are really, really heavily compressed through 2 main types of compressors. One of them, Kevin is quoted as saying is his favorite compressor, DBX 165. And the other one is a really unique kind of compressor called a Shure level lock. You might have also heard of the Soundtoys Devil Lock. It's a really, really aggressive compressor and essentially makes every single part of the signal the same volume. That's why it's called a level lock or a volume lock. You could think of it like that too. And then that's kind of blended into the original drum sound. And that means you got this effect where drum fills or just even really light hits are gonna have the same kind of attack and power as a really powerful hit, which makes this kind of really, really fat, beefy foundation for the rest of the track to sit on top of. I'm gonna record every instrument except for the drums on the new Apollo Twin Gen 2. The drums are gonna be on the bigger Apollo X8. And surprise, I'm actually finishing this video back home because it's Thanksgiving. I'm in my old room. And the Apollo has actually been really helpful with this. Using the SonarWorks integration, I took my Hi-Fi-Man Sundaras and I was actually able to completely flatten them. And then I also set up my little remote Operation SM57 on the new auto gain feature. They're also giving away prizes for the remix competition that's happening a little bit later in the video. So be sure to stick around and check that out as well. So if you're looking to upgrade, I use the Twins all the time. I highly recommend it. So you can see here in terms of Kevin's vocals, we still have a Sennheiser MD421. He's known for using that on not only the percussion and the drums, which is normally where you might find a Sennheiser 421, but also as a vocal mic. Now, as far as I'm aware, whenever it comes to the original Wave House House record. Rob Grant, who was actually at the house and worked on this record, told me in the comments section, those vocals were recorded at a different location. Just a correction from my previous video. Now, one thing that's really kind of characteristic of the Tame Impala vocal sound is the RE501 space echo. This was used all over the original record, and I would assume a similar thing is being used for the effect on his vocal here. There's that boss. And if we look at the Vox amp, looks like they have some sort of Earthworks microphone miking the bottom right corner of the cone there, based on the Tame Impala fans already knowing all the answers. Yeah, it's an Earthworks DM20. Fun fact, these monitors here are what mixed the original record. I don't know if they're being used now, but it's kind of cool. I will put on screen here what I think all of these effects pedals are. Maybe I can make some sort of recreation either digitally or with the guitar pedals that I have to approximate the tone that we're going after here. Now you can hear here on the right side of the image, we have this very synth-like sound. That's actually a guitar. That's one thing about this record that is really cool. I said it in my original video. We can put some of the screen captions up here. A lot of the sounds on this record were the Boss 8-track and 16-track recorders. They had these like presets for guitars and messing with guitar pedals until they made their guitar sound more like a synth. And we see that happening here with this guitarist in the middle. Wait. So if we see here, we have another Boss BR864 that is also going into a Vox AC30. To me, having both those Vox amps have the BR160 next to it kind of means we're getting a mix of DI sound from those Boss interfaces with the Vox guitar amp. And if you notice here on his guitar, whatever microphone that is, let me see if the comments got it right. I can't tell what microphone that is, but it's directly center of the speaker cone, right up to the center of the amp. So I'm gonna go on a limb and say that the guitar tones are both a mix of effects and presets from the Boss BR864 and a Vox AC30, one of which is mic'd with what looks like a small diaphragm condenser. The other one is mic'd, looks like off axis, with an Earthworks DM20. It's a really kind of bright, jangly guitar sound, letting the bass and the drums fill in a lot of the low end. Bass, we got a Hofner bass. Looks like it's going into some sort of Ampeg. So it looks like on the back of the amp, we have an RE20. Looks like it's miking, I'm not sure exactly where the speakers are in this cabinet, so I don't want to misspeak, but based off of its position, it's probably miking kind of the rim of the speaker to get kind of a darker, duller sound. That works with bass amps and guitar amps. The closer you get to the center of the cone, the brighter. The closer you get to the edge of the speaker, the duller the sound. Playing with a pick, looks like. Just a simple Shure SM58 for the backing vocals. They have a Royer 121 for the shaker, which is funny because that's like the most expensive microphone in this recreation, and it's being used for a shaker. You can already tell that those Les Pauls are driving whatever signal chain we're about to run into way harder. Oh, good. It's gonna be harder now. Okay, so that guitar tone on that Les Paul riff could be a number of things. Obviously, super fuzzy. It also sounds like it's clipping out pretty hard in a nice way. That could be just the sound of the fuzz he's using, but it could also be the fact that we're clipping some preamps somewhere in the gain stage. Maybe in that Boss 8-track. I have a Tascam 4-track that I use a lot. When those preamps are clipping, it's a really raunchy sound. So no matter what, I'm probably gonna try and lean into that and get this sort of clippy, tapey, distorty, surfy effect in that way. Woo. I'm excited to like riff hard again. It's been a minute. God, the drums are so sick. One of my favorite parts of any production on a Tame Impala record are always the drums. And it's like not what you're used to. It's like super narrow and mono. And that's what kind of allows other instruments to exist within the peripheral, the stereo image, is because they're so solid, kind of like the beating heart of everything. So fuzzy. Sick. Okay, so let me try and summarize everything that we just saw on the screen.
Quick interruption because I was too scared to say it in the original video. These videos take a ton of time, and the way they actually do well is user engagement, as you guys have probably heard me say many times. So if you like these videos and you'd like to see more, a subscribe, a like, a comment, they mean more than I ever realized before I started doing this little video interruption. So thank you so much.
First and foremost, the drums. The drums have a Sennheiser MD421 on the kick. On the snare, the top is an AKG D19, the side is a D190E. We got a floor tom with a Shure SM57 and a single mono overhead, which is another AKG D19. These drums are not too wide, but they have a lot of compression on them, namely two different kinds of compressors. A DBX 160, I'm gonna guess is being used heavily on this track because I know it was used heavily on the original record, and a Shure level lock. Both of these kind of mixed into the original tone to get a really fat, beefy, really sort of aggressively compressed drum sound. From there, we're gonna have a Hofner bass with an Ampeg amp. We're either gonna use some sort of Ampeg emulation or we're going to use an actual Ampeg, mic'd with an Electro Voice RE20. And then both of the guitars seem to be a mix of DI and a Vox AC30 tone. The Vox AC30 has two different microphones with two different microphone positions, but both of them are also mixed in with a DI sound from a Boss BR864. We know that those presets were used heavily on the first record. I would assume some of those presets are being emulated here. Honestly, if I can't get a close approximation with my fuzz pedal and the Tascam, I might just straight up buy one of these Boss 8 tracks. They're not that expensive. I think they're like $100. And then the vocal is another Sennheiser MD421. We'll use the Mini. And we know that Kevin likes to use a Roland RE501 Space Echo. So we're gonna try and experiment with something similar to that. Now, I'm sure this is Tame Impala. The more we get into this, we're gonna learn more about the sort of like vocal productions as I sort of struggle through it. We're gonna learn more nuance to the details and the tones, but that's a good place to start. So based on that information, I'm gonna start working and I will see you in a few weeks.
All right, it's November now. I want to talk about probably the biggest thing I learned about Tame Impala mixes through the process of remaking this song. Look at this waveform. This is what Lucidity live from the Wave House looks like in waveform mode. Notice how little dynamic range exists in this song. What I'm saying, the key takeaway here is that Tame Impala mixes are very heavily compressed without sounding too compressed. And doing that and making it not taxing on your ears is really hard. And nowhere is that more apparent than in the drums. So whenever it came to the microphones we used, we tried to be as accurate as possible. We put a 421 compact, which has the same frequency response as the regular 421. We put that on the kick, two SM57s placed in roughly the same positions on the snare side and snare top. Hello, Koji. An SM57 on the floor tom, and a single mono SM57 over top the drums. You'll see a Lauten LS208 up there too. That was an experiment that we ended up not using. Everything is placed in mono except for the floor tom, which is slightly off to the right of the listener. Here's a demonstration on how each one of those elements start to build on top of each other. If there was ever a recreation that Michael deserves your follow, it's this one. This man memorized every fill that Julian probably just improvised. Listen to this man shred. He deserves your follow. Now, I normally don't go into the mixing on these videos. That's normally for Patreon, but Tame Impala drum sounds are so important to the production, I'm going to touch on it a little bit here. And if you would like to get access to every single mix breakdown from every single one of these recreations, it's $5 a month on Patreon. So I've got 3 different guitar pedals that all kind of make up the Tame Impala guitar tone. I don't think we're in that part of the video edit yet, but you'll see when we get to the guitar section. I bought them with my own money, and Universal Audio has also decided to provide 23 different software instruments and plugins through their UAD producer pack. And you also don't need any Universal Audio hardware to use them. We're going to do another remix competition because it was really fun the first time. The raw tracks are down in the description. I would just give it a shot. The worst case scenario, you gain a ton of mixing experience. And the best case scenario is you win like $800 worth of gear. So if you want to get a head start, I really heavily recommend checking out the Patreon. Last time listening to your submissions was so fun, and I even cried. Here's proof. Remember, there are no rules. You could just make a really solid mix. You could perform one of the parts yourself and leave all the other instruments. You could sing on it. You could make a really crazy EDM track, which happened last time with Bon Iver, and it was sick. And this one is US only, but for the international audience, I feel you, and every time I make it US only, it sucks. So I promise in the near future we'll do a completely digital giveaway, and you can be part of it. Submissions will close on this day at this time, and then a few days after, I will pick the winner. Let's get back to it. So I approached these drums in 2 different fashions. First, the main drum tracks, and then all of the processing that happens in parallel. The main drum sound is primarily using a DBX 160 compressor. I was shocked at how fast and percussive this compressor was. It primarily compresses that first initial hit of the drums, and then quickly lets go. This makes for very heavy and compressed initial hits, but not too compressed of a signal after the initial drum smack. Check it out and then watch that needle move too. And then in parallel, I focused on creating both the room reverb, which I did with a bunch of wooden room emulations stock to Ableton. And then because I was too cheap to buy the Devil Lock, figured I could kind of hack it. So what I did was use a soft tube transient shaper. I used the sustain knob to essentially pump up the transients after the initial hit, and then further squashing that through a distressor. And that kind of left us with 2 different drum sounds to blend together. The original drum sound, which has compression on the initial attack from the DBX 160, and a more overblown, heavily compressed and heavily distorted parallel sound to blend in to taste. Let's hear both of those sounds as they mix together. A recurring pattern that you're going to hear in all of these examples is that a lot of these audio tracks sound kind of too compressed on their own. It's not till they start to kind of sandwich together where they start to proportionally fall in line as all of them get compressed in the master bus. Think back on that sausage waveform from the beginning, right? Now, Rami from the band Juice, you can check out his Instagram here. He did the bass, and he actually created his own bass sound all on his own laptop that I thought was really accurate. I'm gonna flip to that clip and I'll put a diagram on screen.
Yeah, so the first is the Ready DI box, and then I have an IR loader. So this has like different cabinet simulations loaded up, and I've been using this like 410. I saw in the video that the guy had a 410 cabinet on his Ampeg, I think. I have a channel EQ doing that for whatever reason. 1176 compressor, another compressor. This is like an optical one that's just like smoothing out the whole thing, only doing a few decibels of gain reduction. This is tape delay, but I turn all the delay off and just only use like the character. So it gets like a little bit of the tape saturation.
We ran all of that through the Tascam 414 to give it kind of a fat, sort of near breakup sound. Here is the bass mixed and unmixed. So I mentioned in the first half of this video that there was probably going to be information that we found out after the fact because this is Tame Impala. And boy, we did. Oh my God, we did. Tame Impala fans, dude. It's like the strangest mix of like totally normal people, really don't care about music production, probably don't even think about music too much besides their like morning commute, and like the most die-hard audio engineers on the planet. And there's like no in between. Anyways, one of those diehards posted his entire pedal board from the Wave House on Reddit, because of course they did. I'm gonna outline the rough chain here, although it's pretty insane, so I apologize if I get some of this wrong. Here's what's important for us. The primary fuzz tone is a fuzz face. He's got 2 Holy Grail reverbs and then 2 Boss blues drivers. I initially thought the guitar tones were comprised of a mix of DI and the Vox AC30, but Kevin actually has an A-B switch. This means he's swapping between the amp and the Boss BR864 depending on the tone he's going for. Through a lot of experimenting, it was pretty clear that the clean tones and the crunch tones were coming through the amp, and the fuzz tones were going DI through a fully dimed preamp. So I bought a DI splitter, and then after my pedal board sent 1 signal to my guitar amp and 1 signal to my Tascam 414. We're using my Les Paul named Splat, which is the coolest guitar on earth, and I will not be taking counter arguments. I set the amp to break up slightly and then recorded it with a Sennheiser MK4. In post, I added a blues driver emulation, a ton of reverb, and then some extra crunch from the Ableton Overdrive and Goodhertz tube. Let's hear those ultra clean tones and then the crunch tones as well. For the fuzz, I fully dimed the preamp on my Tascam, and then I completely overloaded it with my Pet Yeti fuzz pedal. This is the voicing I came up to make it very fuzz face-like, and on the solo I added a wah, because it was fun. I hope Kevin approves. Here are those tones mixed and unmixed. Now, vocals were actually shockingly easy, and I thought I was gonna have to fight a lot, but not really. Zach came and completely crushed it, and his resemblance to Kevin's voice is like uncanny. If you like the new Tame Impala sound, you should really check out his band Super Taste. There's so much of like the same DNA there, and he told me he would really like if you guys checked out their first album, Supernova, so go check it out. You know, all of these guys that help me are working class musicians in New York City, and they are all incredibly talented. So if you're into local bands, you're into small artists, all these guys that I'm serving you are just like cream of the crop. So go show them some love. So most of the EQ that I did was just like high pass filtering, and that's about it, honestly. And then I used Universal Audio's Roland Tape Echo, and these are the settings that I used to get a pretty convincing Tame Impala reverb delay effect. And honestly, the vocal didn't really need any more work besides just some compression after that. And the one thing that we did different from the live version, we decided to double the vocal, and that's what they do on the studio version, so we took some inspiration there. Let's add all of these effects and EQ decisions on top of each other.
I know where you went, but I don't know how you got there. I know where you went, but I don't know how you got there. I know where you went, but I don't know how you got there.
So before showing you the mix, I want to do one more demonstration. Listen to each instrument alone and then as it gets added into the mix. I want you to notice how the loudness of each one of these instruments gets squashed as other instruments begin to get added. Compression is doing so much work on this mix. I'm so sorry. I'm going to interrupt one more time. I've just recently learned that I don't know how many people know about the second channel. If you ever wanted to just listen to these songs without hearing them in the context of a bigger video essay, there's a second channel where all the performances live. So you can check it out down below. And with that, here is our version of Lucidity live from the Wave House.
I know where you went, but I don't know how you got there. I know where you went, but I don't know how you got there. Silver tongue hill where you talk up what I played down. I would speak up, but I wouldn't know what to say. Lucidity, come back to me. Put all 5 senses back to where they're meant to be. Oh, it's hard to tell. Breaks down. There is a will, there is a way. Wandering around like spare time never knew it. I might suck fizzle or I might just float away. Float away. Lucidity, come back to me. Put all 5 senses back to where they're meant to be. Oh, where we'll go. Tiptoe, tread boldly right down to the
All right, folks, I hope you enjoyed. And remember, if you want to check out the mix tutorial, it's over on Patreon. And I'll see you in the next one. Have a happy Thanksgiving. Or whatever time of year this is, have a happy whatever holiday is closest. Bye bye.